Welcome everyone. I'm TJ Randall, the Chief Customer Success Officer here at Instruct, and welcome to this linked live event. Please, as a reminder, use the comments functionality throughout the webinar. And to get that started, why don't you go ahead and let us know where you're joining from. So I'm super excited to be here today with Raghu, and we are going to talk about how they're leveraging Instruct within MongoDB University. So Instruct is an all-in-one product growth suite. And the secret sauce that Instruct provides is hands-on learning in real sandbox environments, which gives learners the opportunity to work through real-world scenarios. And then customers leverage this approach for lead generation, for sales enablement, self-service demos, and much more. Instruct's been partnered with MongoDB since 2022 when we first started talking about this amazing initiative to change the way in which any developer can learn technology. And since then, MongoDB has gone live with MongoDB University. I'm so excited to be sitting here today with Raghu Viswanathan, the Vice President of Education and Academia and Documentation at MongoDB. How are you, Raghu?
Good morning and good afternoon to you. Hope all's well.
That's excellent. So we have an awful lot to cover today, and we're so excited to talk about MongoDB. What you're doing there is it's incredible in terms of learning and engagement. So how about we start there? Do you want to tell me a little bit about education at MongoDB?
Yeah, absolutely. At MongoDB, the education department is actually made of different teams, and all of them share a common passion for education and training people. The first group is MongoDB University, which you mentioned, and this is our online training business here at MongoDB. It's a free training business, and the idea is we like to provide really a superior learning experience. It's not just content, but it's also labs through Instruct, and it's also adding quizzing and all the other capabilities that we can talk about later in this session. Right. The second area is MongoDB documentation. And so this is our official tech docs in the company. We have over 25,000 pages of documentation covering every piece of functionality. It's a very popular way to learn because developers like to go to documentation to take a look at content. And then the last area in the department is MongoDB Academia. And this is the function that has an outreach program to colleges and universities. And what we do here is we go after two specific audiences. One is our educators. So think of them as professors and instructors, and we want them to teach document databases and talk about MongoDB in particular, ideally. And then our second audience underneath that are students, and we want to get to students where they are. Sometimes it's in the classroom, sometimes it's through student offers, and there's many ways that students use technology today, and we want to be where they are. So in a nutshell, like I said, all these three groups share this passion for learning, and that's how we're made up here at MongoDB Education.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's such a cultural thing. So why is this important to MongoDB?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And so, if we step back and look at the world today, it's not a secret that really data and innovation is really where things are at. Any good business these days has a great sense of data and a great sense of innovation. And we believe strongly that developers are at the center of that, because what happens is developers are the ones who are using the technology, using the data. And in many cases, sometimes they're the ones actually making the decisions about what to purchase. And so developers are quite empowered these days. And so for us at MongoDB, we want developers to be very successful. That's how we operate here. And so to keep that in mind, we want to make it easy for them. And so our developer data platform is really designed to do exactly that. And so with that, developers can build great applications, focus on new features, focus on differentiation, and not have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. So all that's taken care of for you here at MongoDB. So that's the idea. And so Atlas is our underlying data management cloud service, and it powers really our data platform. And within Atlas is the document data model, which has been a proven model that MongoDB has been talking about for nearly 13 years, I should say, since 2010. And the proof's in the numbers. We've had had 300 million downloads of MongoDB in 10 countries around the world. And so it's huge adoption. The company itself right now is about 4,500 employees. We're over $1 billion in revenue. So you can see there's a lot of momentum essentially in terms of where we're going. And so for us, education is a big enabler of how we see the world here, and it fits beautifully into the company strategy. And and then stepping back again at a macro level, what we're noticing is that there are about 30 million skilled jobs that are just unfilled in this day and age. And we think that number is going to grow in skilled jobs that are needed out there. So there's a real need for people to learn. There's a real need for people to go into tech. And we would love, and we recognize that, when you go into tech, there's lots of choices in terms of what you can learn. And so our philosophy is that we want to make it very easy for someone to start learning with us. Make it easy, get people excited, and then the right thing happens in the end. So this is really why we care about this. And it's really a central tenet of how we work here.
It's so important too, right? Giving people the opportunity to understand that, technology is such a broad space, and understanding like there's different areas where you can engage and learn, and it doesn't have to be, that one thing. It can be multiple things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then obviously you're focusing, which is so important, right, on learner experience. Talk a little bit about that for me. Help me understand, like, what is your philosophy around learner experience?
Yeah, and so I would say there's 4 underlying philosophies that we use here at MongoDB, and we use this almost as a blueprint when we make decisions in terms of what to invest in. The first one simply is that we recognize the different types of learners out there. Some people like to learn by watching video and having that type of human engagement type experience, and that's a completely valid way of learning. Some people like to learn directly by working with the product. Sometimes I say learn by keyboard, just dive right in, start coding, and learn that way. Another great way to learn. Some people like to learn through quizzes and assessments because they like to assess themselves, and then wherever they're deficient, they just learn that portion of it. So that's another very legitimate way of learning. And some people go all the way out and they will just literally get certified first and try that and see where they're at. So what we recognize at MongoDB is that there's different styles of learners, and it's really important to the different styles. So that's one sort of guiding philosophy. The second philosophy for us is modularity. So we believe very strongly in this idea of small chunks of learning. So imagine that you only have 5 minutes to spare, maybe you have 7 minutes to spare, and you could be productive in those 5 minutes and learn something right away. So we don't feel this need to give you hours and hours of training up front. If you have that kind of time, we have the content for you. But if you only have 5 minutes to spare, learn that way and learn in a repeated fashion, and that's completely okay with us. The third philosophy is what we call frictionless learning, and we believe very strongly in this. We want to make it very easy for people to get to our content, and we've gotten to the point where we actually don't even ask you for an email to access our content now. So it's free learning, it's frictionless learning for you to get to our content right away, and we believe the right thing happens when you do that, because once you expose the learning, people see the technology, nurture through the process, and hopefully use it more. So we want learning just to be that enabler and catalyst to move things forward. And the last thing I'll say as a philosophy is that what we recognize is because we're on the cloud these days, all cloud companies, us included, change technology very quickly. There's new features every quarter, literally. So as a learner, it's not productive to say, I need to relearn everything every quarter. I think of it as delta learning or incremental learning, where you just sort of learn what you need to stay current on the technology. So we've invested in this concept called learning bites, which sit parallel to our idea. There is, these are topical pieces of content, and it's ways for you to stay current on the technology. So it's really a combination of these things, right? It's a style of learning, it's a frictionless piece, it's the it's the modularity, and also the ability to stay current. And so what you're seeing in front of you here is just an experience of what our learning experience looks like. The top graphic in this slide shows you what our new videos look like, and you can see there's a very high production value in these videos. videos. And we also enable language subtitles. So if you want to see, listen to videos in English, but watch subtitles in Chinese, or maybe you want to in Korean or Spanish or Portuguese, we actually have the ability to support multiple languages to help regional markets out there. The image in the bottom left is with Instruct, and we're very happy with our partnership with Instruct. And what we have is the ability for people to start our way. And a lab for us is a hands-on exercise. So what we do is we provide instructions in the right side of that image. And then on the left side, we log you directly into Atlas, which is our cloud service, and you can start working with it right away. So it's a very, very great interface for us, and it's worked out really well. The image in the middle at the bottom row is what we call knowledge checks. So this is where we help learners assess themselves to see how they're progressing. And there's no penalty for failing or anything like that. You literally just take the quiz and keep taking it until you're satisfied. And the quizzes reinforce learning that we offer. The learning through the videos, labs is all reinforced through our quizzing capability. And that leads to our certification at the end of the day. And then finally, on the image on the right side is where we allow for a lot of supplemental assets that people would need. So in our world, because we cater to developers, we want to provide a lot of coding examples to make a combination of extra code assets, text assets, and other reference assets that we include also. So all this is kind of connected in a single learning experience. And I think that's been the value for us to, again, going back to catering to those styles, and we have those experiences that are available there.
That's amazing. And you really, it seems like surround the learner with a full experience. So it's like you said earlier, it's addressing how they like to learn, so multiple options, but also who they are. Like even just the subtitles for the videos, what an amazing way to make sure that everybody benefits from that learning.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, we just want to make it available for everyone, and it's okay. We love different learning styles.
Of course. You'll have to do a study next on which one tends to be more popular for what technology. You could start your own quadrant in that way, right? So
I think you're right.
So what was your approach? The labs are amazing. How did you think about the personas as you sat down and said, how are we going to revolutionize this?
Yeah. So, the labs have been amazing, by the way. So I do want to talk about that a little bit, because what the labs are central to our learning experience, because developers love to code, and getting them to code quickly is really, really important. And so for us, when we went down the path of looking for a technology, we were looking for a technology that is easy to use and is very intuitive to use. That's one. The second thing is the ability to have coding examples where people can either type it themselves or literally cut and paste it across. Another thing that we wanted was scripts where we could check the work that someone does. And then last but not least, we want to integrate it right back into the learning management system so that it's all integrated in one user experience, right? So what we don't want to do is send our learners in one direction for videos, one direction for labs, one direction for quizzes, and have this sort of scattershot learning model. What we wanted to just have a single experience. And so for us, Instruct really checked off those boxes. It was really tremendous for us. And the proof is in the numbers. You mentioned it in your introduction. We have had we've been live for exactly 90 days. Today is our 90th day. And in 90 days, we've had over 190,000 labs that we've had. And out of that, by the way, I should say that about 140 of those, 1,000 of those labs were complete. So the completion rate's very high. The lab usage rate right now is very high, and we're very, very pleased with that. And of it is, in addition to the features that you all have, I think part of the magic is back to the tenets of how we operate, which is simple labs, keep it short, make it easy to get to, and let people feel that success in working with the technology, and they can build on it from there. So for me, I think that's been sort of the magic, if you will, the secret sauce, as you put it in your introduction, of how this stuff kind of works. You mentioned personas, so for us, developer is the number one persona that we care about, but really we have a lot of other personas. We have architects, we have administrators, we have analysts, we have many different people that are using MongoDB technology. We build content to cater to those audiences. The other dimension of the personas is that we recognize that we are, we're training partners, we're training customers, we are training individuals out there in the marketplace. We are training students, we're training instructors, different audience segments that we're catering to also. So for us, it's really a combination of recognizing those segments, recognizing the learning styles, and just bringing it all together. Is really how we see it.
That makes sense. And it's interesting, the internal enablement piece, at least from Instruct's perspective, we see that an awful lot because, again, we're hiring these great, smart developers, for example, and we need to get them, to be able to bend steel within our technology and leveraging a learning approach that you've taken. It's nice that you're able to do so for not only just your external folks and your partners and things like that, but also your internal employees.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because, as I mentioned, MongoDB is 4,500 employees. We have a lot of wonderful technical people here. And so training them is just as important because if we can have 4,500 well-trained employees, that's a force multiplier for us in the marketplace, right? Because there's that much more, great knowledge that's being imparted out there. So internal enablement has become just as important to us as our external audiences, so we do both now. And I'm so glad you highlighted that.
Of course. I think of it, we talk a lot about developer experience, and that really is a movement that's so just critical to focus on. What's the experience in terms of upskilling and learning? So
Yes.
Overall, I mean, again, some amazing things. So why invest in this? Like, why is this the mission for MongoDB?
Yeah, and it comes back to, I think my introduction where, we are very passionate about developers. We're very passionate about data and innovation. We recognize that education is a huge enabler of that. And it's really furthering the core mission of MongoDB, which is why I enjoy working here. It's really, there's a real passion here for education and wanting to train as many people as we can and do it in a very scalable kind of manner with a very rich experience. And, we're providing a very modern learning style. And I think for us, that's been, why we made that investment. And then in the end, we want our learners to benefit from it, and an easy way to benefit from it is to say that you're getting certified. Because by getting certified, what you're saying is that you're officially knowledgeable in MongoDB. Badge from us, you can put that on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. You can use that as part of your job, your career, your job hunt, if you're looking for a job, whatever your status is. Certification is always going to work for you, whether you're just trying to up-level your job or you're reskilling or whatever you might be. And that's always my encouragement to people. When people say, Raghu, what do you recommend to get started? I say, focus on being certified. Right. Yeah. And to get there, you need to take our content, you need to take our labs, you need to take our quizzes. And if you do all that right, you will do well in the exam, get certified. And then that's the launching pad for where you want to go.
Right. And I think tied to the content that you're building, one of the things that's so impressive is how relevant it is to real world experience. So it's not just a certification, like, you're able to answer the quizzes. But if I'm an employer and I look at somebody who's applying for a job and you're like, this person really understands how MongoDB is applicable, for example, to an enterprise customer who is leveraging the technology.
Absolutely. And this is, I think, where the lab investment has been so important to us, because the best way to demonstrate real world skills is by giving you exercises and seeing if you can do it. And so, skill validation is really important. Knowledge validation is one thing, but skill validation is something else. And so we like to do both here at MongoDB. And this is where I think Instruct has been great for us, to let people literally play with the technology, try it out, and prove that they know what they're doing. And so it's in a very nurturing environment. So learn at your pace and do it right for your style.
I can't wait to see the first social media post where somebody declares, I was able to capture this great new job because of my certification at MongoDB University.
Oh, absolutely. That warms my heart when I hear that, right? It's all about, this is why I love being in learning, because it's the human impact, the positive human impact. We've all benefited from learning in different ways, whether it's getting that new job, like you said, maybe it's up-leveling where you're at right now, maybe it's getting promoted, whatever it is. And in some cases, for some people, it's literally life-changing. They go from one economic status to another economic status. and so there's all those wonderful stories that are behind education. This is why I love the human side of what we do.
For sure. So what's the long view then for education? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so we have a lot of great work that's going on right now. So, for me, there's a few things that are on my mind. One is that I want to continue to grow the assets that we have. So grow the courses, more learning bites, which are our topical assets, more labs. I envision a world where I'd love to have hundreds and thousands of labs. It's kind of how I see it, because it's such a great way to learn, more ways to get certified. So really providing learners more opportunities and more entry points to one broad category. I would say the second thing for me is I'm very big on having a wide distribution of our content. So it's, I'm right now we're working with some very big learning community providers, and we're looking to basically syndicate our content to those platforms. And so the idea is that if you want to consume MongoDB content, you can surely come to my platform. That's completely fine. But you can also go to these other places and consume things also, because we just want to make training ubiquitous at the end of the day. We just want to make it easy to get to. So, and I think part of our free mission, frictionless mission, lets us do that. I think the third thing I would say is that I'm also very interested in getting learning as close to the product as possible. I'd love to see a world where, someone's in Atlas and you can learn right away while you're doing what you want to do in Atlas. So for me, it's at the same time, versus learning being a discrete activity that you have to do on the side. And we're making a lot of strides in that direction. I'm very excited about that. And then I think the last thing I would simply say is, trying to provide a personalized learning experience, more personalization. So personalization by the role that you represent, the persona that you represent, maybe having dedicated microsites, that we can have in our experience, dedicated labs for different use cases, learning for different industry vertical markets. There's so many ways that we can segment learning. And so for me, having those options and making them available is really important. So that long view is where we're at, and very excited. There's a lot, like I said, a lot of passion around this kind of thing, which is great.
And so that's interesting with the syndication model as well, that again, it's the whole practice what you preach type of thing. You're really showcasing how to do that. It seems like, I think a lot of other companies are going to look at that as the new way of learning in terms of getting their content into the hands of end learners. What was the genesis of that syndication kind of approach?
Yeah, for us, it was just a recognition that there are millions of learners out there today. Even in tech, there are literally millions of learners. And so for us to try to attract those millions of learners to our platform would be very hard to do. I mean, we can do a lot of great marketing. We can do a lot of internet SEO, Google, optimization to attract people. And we do all that, which is great. But what we'd rather do is say, let's just go where the learners are. If there's millions of learners on different platforms, let's just place our content right there and make it available to them. So it's just this realization that to build something at scale, I think it's really important to just go where learners are. And it's not just one location. If you look at different continents around the world, they all have different providers for different reasons. So maybe it's Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking, or maybe in Europe. So for us, we're because we are set up this way, it's great. We can just literally evangelize learning, which makes it very easy. And syndication is a natural, I think, evolution of that.
Absolutely. So let's walk through a sample for a learner. So let's say I'm a young person, I'm just graduating from college. I have maybe a computer science degree, and they say I'm very interested in this technology. What's the next thing? So when they go to MongoDB University, what does that experience look like?
Yeah, so when you go to MongoDB University, and the URL is learn.mongodb.com, so it's easy to remember, what you're going to notice there are several learning paths. And so we're going to give you a learning path to become certified on MongoDB, and you can choose what language you want to focus on. Maybe you're a Java person, or maybe you're Python, maybe you're Node, maybe you're C#. whatever that might be, we have learning that caters to you. In that path, what you're going to notice is a introduction to MongoDB course, and it's set up exactly the way I've been describing it for the last few minutes. And so you take that class, you take a driver class, and then with that, you're going to be pretty knowledgeable on MongoDB, the foundations of MongoDB at that point, and then you'll have a chance to get certified. So that's really my recommendation. Come to our site, take Intro to MongoDB, absorb that learning experience, and then take it from there.
Excellent. And do you find that your learning path takes you through a set of courses, like you kind of understand the technology, and then how would I apply that in certain situations or in my job role?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do with our learning paths is you'll recognize that there are courses in there, and then within the courses we have this concept of units and lessons. So a lesson is the most atomic piece of learning that we have, and so this is the thing that I mentioned before, where it's in the 5 to 7 minute range. But with the lesson is a lab. So you are learning something and you're practicing something very quickly. And then with that is also a quick 2-question quiz to check your level of knowledge. So all that's wrapped into a modular learning experience that you can go through quickly. And then if you've got more time, take another lesson. If you have less time, come back next time and we'll be here waiting for you. So it's really set up that way to make it easy for you.
Okay. And by the way, I'm encouraging here for the audience, if there's any questions for you as well, to add those in. I am watching for that. Of course, I have 100 questions for you. So so that learning path absolutely makes sense. What are some of the kind of metrics that you've seen to date? Like, how are your users' behavior? We talked about some significant numbers there.
Yeah.
And some great engagement, by the way. You didn't mention, but your scoring for your challenges and your tracks is quite high as well. So
it's very high as well. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. So, one of the things we're very particular about here is understanding what is good, right? We ask ourselves that question internally, like, what does good look like? Is a question that comes up quite a bit. So for us, the way we have this concept of what we call North Star metrics, which are 3 broad metrics that we care about a lot. The first one is quality. And we care about the quality of our labs, and we care about the quality of our content. So, and we have a 5-star rating scale. So I'm very pleased to say that our content's about 4.75 stars out of 5. And that's after over 70,000 reviews of our content just in 90 days. So it's not just 1 or 2 people saying this, it's literally a lot of people saying this, which is great. And same for the labs. We have a high rating, 4.5 on our labs, a lot of happy faces in your Instruct scored there. So we like that a lot. And we're very vigilant about this. We measure down to the video and lab, individual lab level, because we want to look at every single asset and make sure that every single asset is delivering quality, because it's easy to sort of look at quality at a macro level, and macro numbers can hide micro numbers. And so we've taken this philosophy. We're going to go right to the micro assets and be very clear about how to do that. So quality is one broad metric. The second one I would say is engagement. So we're very particular about making sure the site is appealing, it's enticing for learners to come. They want to come back, be a repeat learner right now. So for us, our engagement numbers are also very high. So we have at least 15-20 minutes engagement time for a lot of our learners and lessons right now. And so we're very excited about that. And then from there, I think we're also looking into a number of people that get certified. And so we want to track that business, and that business is now tripling for us also. And so we're just in the space where we're passionate about the engagement. We're passionate about helping people get certified if they choose to do so, based on the conversation we just had. And so that's really what good looks like to us, and we have a ton of other metrics that we look at, of course, so it's not just 3 things, but it's good to have us, I think, and I always encourage teams to have that, because then it sort of rallies a team, it keeps people going forward in the same direction.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like too, by clearly having those numbers in focus, right? So as you're working on, for example, say, hey, how do we create even better developer experience when we're creating content? What we're measuring against, so to speak. So if you're a content creator, you can understand that those are very valuable things. It's not just creating content per se for creating content.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we really care about what the end result is at the end of the day. And, my team is very sensitive to that, which is it's a very good thing, right? Having the passion for the learner. And I almost call it a learner first approach, right? Think of the learner and then work backwards from there, and good things will happen.
Yeah. And how does your team think about that? Like, what does a day in the life on your team look like when you're talking about the content itself? So you say, okay, we're going to focus on some developer content because we've noticed that this might be an area where we can, add some more, hands-on type of experience for that. So what does that kind of sound like when they're whiteboarding that and pulling it together?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, I have a wonderful team, so I'm very proud of them. And so we have several functions. We have a product management function, and they sort of set the strategy in terms of what are the key areas that we should focus on. What are the big topics that are very popular, that are very highly requested, and we cater to that list first because, for obvious reasons. From there, we have a whole curriculum team that does a lot of design, whiteboarding of our content in terms of what it's going to look like, a lot of rigor around defining what the scope of the courses are going to look like. And we also have this concept of what's called a job task analysis. The term is JTA. And what it is simply is that we take every persona and we ask ourselves, what do we expect that persona to do? So for example, what do we expect a developer, and then what do we expect an advanced developer to do? So once we know what those tasks are that they need to know, then we know what the learning objectives are, and then we know what the testing objectives are also. So that JTA process sort of goes end to end and lays out the groundwork of defining the persona, what that person is responsible for doing, and what that person can be tested on to validate that they know what they're doing. So for us, that's our life, and underneath that, of course, we have great video production crews that build the great videos that you saw. We have wonderful people working on the lab infrastructure to make sure that works beautifully. We have people that write. So there's a whole. It takes a village, to create courses, and so we have a wonderful village here, and that's kind of the way we work.
One thing I think that's it sounds like you're taking it for granted, which is a good thing, but having that product marketing piece in there as well, it joined into the team, it sounds like there's a really nice synergy there, because as you talked about earlier, all companies now, SaaS companies especially, you can generate so many great features so fast, then all of a sudden you don't want that to become a problem as well. And I think that is something important that you're doing there, is your product marketing team is part of that conversation. And it sounds like what ends up happening is, because you're focusing on the learner and what you want them to learn, it's almost like you can almost check that box, say, okay, we not only are creating great features for our communities, we're also aligning to making sure people can use them and leverage them.
That's really well said. It's that alignment, as a word that we use inside the company, is really important. Alignment with product management, alignment with product marketing, making sure that what we're building is something that people want at the end of the day, right? And to your point, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And we have this very, what I call, service mentality. We want to make other people successful. So for us, it's really just an alignment. Education is a natural fit for something like that. So yeah, you're right. That is a guiding principle of how we work.
Was there any learnings that you can kind of think of now that you're live and you have such, the amount of numbers and the amount of content, and as we talked about earlier, as you look forward, any learnings for when you first started out that you might have wanted to go back to and say, oh, we probably should have considered this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, I feel like the decisions that we made were very solid, honestly, right, all the way through. There was a lot of lessons learned in building this content, checking quality, reviewing with subject matter experts. There's a lot of work behind the scenes that really happens, and so we're always just looking for efficiencies, and how to do that, and making sure that we not only velocity is important, but velocity doesn't mean less quality for us. It's velocity with high quality is kind of what we care about. So for us, I think our lessons learned to be mostly around just fine tuning our processes and doing more with that. And we're just excited to continue to grow that catalog and take it from here.
Yeah, for sure. And one question that came through was around, you had talked a little bit earlier about developers wouldn't have to deal with infrastructure, so they could kind of jump right in. And then I would imagine if, some of the administrator courses are highly focused on infrastructure. So do you mind kind of talking a little bit about how you leverage Instruct for those kind of almost two different experiences when it comes to the actual MongoDB infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the wonderful thing about Atlas is that you don't underlying workings of AWS or GCP or Azure, you can use any of those cloud services, and you can even mix and match them if you want in your deployment, which is an incredible capability, by the way. I was so wowed by it when I actually walked into MongoDB. I couldn't believe that was the case. It's that seamless in terms of how you can work to cloud services. And so for us, you're right about the administrator courses. So we have two flavors. We have one that's for our Atlas product, and there everything's seamless. I mean, we teach you how to do it through Atlas, but you don't really have to worry much about the underlying infrastructure at all. With that, then you can, of course, we have content for that too, if you care about it. But if you just want to use it out of the box and do it that way, we teach you how to do that. And then you mentioned different styles of labs, and we do have that too. We do have an on-premise product also, and so which is also popular. So we have on-premise labs also, in addition to cloud labs. And I think this, for me, has been one of the powers of working with Instruct. We've been delighted to work with you all because you've been very flexible in letting us design different styles of labs out there, whether it's for cloud, on-prem, and different use case scenarios. And we've even extended our lab infrastructure around you to allow for all these capabilities. So for us, that's been a big win.
Oh, excellent. That's great to hear. It's something we're quite proud of ourselves, as well as, again, when you talk about meeting learners where they're at, that technology is important. You want them to have a great experience, like you've talked about, right? And you also want it to be applicable to the content that you're trying to train them on, right?
That's right.
You don't need to necessarily deal with installing a particular piece of technology until you understand what's the value of this, technology that I'll be working with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So after the intro course, this is just a general question. For the intro course that you spoke about, where are you seeing the most users go after that? So they come in, they get an understanding on it, but are you seeing any consistent leaders in terms of tracks?
Yeah, we are. So what's happening is our intro courses are where a lot of our traffic is right now, and we're excited. That means we're attracting a lot of new learners, right?
Sure.
Which is really what we always wanted to do. So from there, what learners do is we have some advanced topics that people take. Some people go in that direction. Some people go towards the certification direction is what they do, and they want to get certified. Some people are doing that, and then some people are going towards the administrator courses. Actually, they're you can be a developer, but if you want to learn more, you can also dabble into the world of administration also. And so we're starting to see that kind of movement where people go. We just want to cater to everybody's objectives there at the end of the day.
One of the things I'm so curious about, Raghu, is if I'm inside of, let's say, a large enterprise and we're moving to MongoDB. So it's a company that's transitioning onto this technology. It would be so interesting to participate in some of those learnings, because that's really that persona. They're probably developers who are very successful and have great technical skills, but it's like, guess what? You're going to learn a whole brand new thing. And wouldn't it be just an amazing thing to be able to be part of that upskilling journey? Because as you talked about today, there really is a clear path for success. It's like, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Developer, when you're done with this, these are the things that you're going to be able to accomplish. And I think that's a real valuable use case for people.
It's so true, because while I'm making all this training ubiquitous and generally available for free and all this, the company's doing something similar, where we're making it easy for you to try out our software, get started, build that first workload, and get comfortable with it, and then move from a workload into a testing scenario into a production scenario, right? And so you're absolutely right. I think there's a whole journey there, a life cycle journey that it's great to be a part of.
Yeah. And I think the other side of that is the business value side of that. Imagine sitting on you're a CIO or a CTO, and you're like, thinking, how are we going to get there? And having something like this in your back pocket to say, I know we're going to get there because we have a great way to learn it.
Yeah. And it's so true. And I think it comes back to my original point, which is, CIOs, of course, but a lot of decisions are influenced by developers at the end of the day. Those choices of technology are driven by who makes it easy for you to use it and prove out to people this technology is great. And that's what I love about MongoDB. We just, make it easy for you to get started with our trials, start with learning. We want you to experience our software straight up, and we just want you to absolutely experience it and get started, and you'll you prove it to yourself that you'll enjoy it.
Sure. What a great idea. Get people excited about it and get their hands on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was wonderful to hear about what you're doing there. And I think this is just a journey that's going to be a lot of fun to follow as more and more people come and join.
Yeah, and thank you also for the partnership. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you for being part of our journey too. We appreciate that.
We love it. All right. Talk soon, Raghu.
Thank you. Take care.